What's your fake scenario that will never happen, but I like to imagine it anyway, so that I can fall asleep? Quitting my job with no notice. I did that once. It was every bit as great as you imagine it. I had some money saved up and had a small side business I was working on. My regular job totally sucked and was going downhill fast. I was due to work a 4 p.m-12 shift. I was out golfing, and after the first 9 I would have to leave to get ready for work. I started to pack up to leave, but noticed it was a beautiful sunny day, not too hot. I was out having fun with my friends, and realized you only get so many of these days in your life. So I picked up my phone, quit my job, lit up a joint, and played 27 more holes of golf instead of going to work. This was in May and I decided to just not work that summer. I had burned through my savings by September, but it was worth it. This was 17 years ago and honestly it was probably the best summer of my life. I regret nothing. What I would do on a deserted island, like my survival plan. That's my retirement plan. In middle school I would imagine that a portal would tear through my classroom and a group of uniformed mythological people would come out and would urgently request me by name and tell me that they really needed me, and then they would whisk me away to some other world where I was their only hope in some ancient war. Just so that everyone around me could wonder why I was so important. Over a decade later I'm writing a webcomic about it. Got about 100 pages out. I'm deleting it now so I can redo it, since now I'm a proper adult and not a broody 15-year-old. Don't get rid of it. Always save a copy to see how much of a dumbass you were. I time travel to 1973 and try to explain the internet to people. Sometimes I like to think about bringing someone from 1950 or 1960 to today. Explaining history, technology, etc. Sometimes I imagine setting up a movie theater in the Middle Ages and showing the people of that era Star Wars episodes 1 to 6. Adventures of Space Cowboy continues. You're gonna carry that weight. Weird thing, but what helps me sleep is imagining that I'm sleeping with a group that's being hunted by insert fantasy creature here. But our party's wizard has created an illusory safety bubble that keeps us warm, comfortable and hidden from our would-be foes. I pretend I'm a potato buried underground. It's so dark down there, and the weight of the dirt comforts me. Potatoes have no fears. Potatoes have no anxiety. Sweet dreams. Potato. I imagine things I wish I said. Not like arguments that I win. I'm just kinda introverted, and I don't say a lot of things that would greatly add to a conversation. I'm living in an alpine cabin above the snow line. Just me and a dog. Each day I cut firewood. Each night I spend the evening watching the fire and drinking black coffee while the dog snores. I used to envision that there's global epidemic of some kind and the world has gone to sleep, looting and whatnot. The government has collapsed and I have to be super quiet to avoid the upheaval outside. I got like 60% of that for real in 2020 and it wasn't nearly as cool as my daydream. I do something similar, but the epidemic is zombies. Instead of trying to be still in bed, I envision how my homestead will be set up and defended. Being cuddled / given affection / comforted and being told nice / reassuring things while I'm feeling sleep lol. I'm not the only one starved for affection. Thank God. Seeing my grandfather again. I dream about him a lot because he was the best friend I'll ever have and I really miss him. It's been a long time now since he passed away and I'm starting to forget things about him and it hurts my heart so much. I'm suddenly filthy rich and can finally support my family. I'd buy us a house and good health food. If we needed something I could get it. If something broke I could get it fixed. I could donate to charities and support groups. Sometime I also imagine in this world that calories don't count, so I don't have to keep dieting. I have a 16-year fantasy world not really written. Mostly just back of my mind kind of escape, and I just expand on that for a bit. Really interesting thinking back on what I've brought up for it and how big/small it's gotten. At this point I've gotten to an anthology type stage where there's a main story in the background, but a lot of mini stories being told to secondary and tertiary characters. Mostly because the main character has been around for so long and gone through so many realities that this helps other people catch up and lets me go over what I came up with before but didn't really expand on. It's nice to be able to go back to that, but still keep everything alive and progressing. Finding my soulmate and falling in love. Same. But he's also from New Zealand and will take me to the promised land. I imagine that I'm a homeless guy trying to sleep on a park bench. It's freezing cold and I only have a ragged dirty old suit on. I struggle trying to cover my body with newspapers and cardboard to keep warm. Then a kind person delivers me from this freezing hell and places me in my warm bed where I'm currently, all snuggly. A life where I have a GF and we are living together and doing silly things with each other and making jokes. Or going to a park or zoo and having conversations with each other. 1. I like to imagine being in a cave in a blizzard, cozy in the cave, while the whipping winds of my ceiling fan circulate oxygen in my blanket den. I'm rich and I don't need to wake up at 6:30 in the morning. My fake scenarios just range between wholesome life and peep. I imagine I finally have a boyfriend, or better yet, husband, and we are cuddling. I use a fan for white noise, so sometimes I pretend the sound is the humming of a spaceship and I'm sleeping in a little bed next to a big window looking out into space. That's neat. Being happy. That's rough, buddy. I used to fantasize about winning the lottery to go to sleep. It can be fun. Mainly I think about where I would go on travel, what concerts I would see, how many festivals can I do in a year, etc. As I've gotten older, I recognize that winning the lottery is quite likely to ruin my life instead of elevate it. I'm fairly fortunate in my career, and so I have the privilege to say this. I'm not hungry. My kids get clothes and school. I'm able to pay a mortgage. Stuff like that. See? When you start thinking about this stuff, it doesn't help with sleep. So sometimes I think of myself in the world of one of my favorite movies or books. How would I contribute to the events or interact with the characters? Harry Potter is a special favorite. Me in a Britney Spears music video. Having a girlfriend that loves me. A friend to talk to. A mom and dad that's still alive. I miscarried a baby several years ago now. Through resulting complications I lost my ability to have children. I have no idea why, but I just know it was a little girl. Most nights I fall asleep thinking about who she would have become. I usually imagine that I'm going to sleep next to someone I love, despite being intensely single. Of course, I'm not myself in this imaginary scenario, since I'm younger, and more attractive, and more talented, and more interesting. And, of course, this other person is totally imaginary too. And sometimes it's in some kind of sword dance sorcery fantasy world, but not always. Sometimes thinking about it makes me cry, because I know I'm too old and too ugly for this to ever happen. But sometimes I can sink into it enough that I'll fall asleep. A very weird thing that helps me sleep. I make a story in my mind. Right now it's set in the Walking Dead universe. There's this girl named Rose and this guy named Arthur. Other characters of course, but I tell stories about what they go through. It kinda mirrors my life struggles, but in the land of the dead. Don't judge me. I imagine paying off all my debts, one by one. Once they are all paid I can sleep. Can you imagine paying off my debts as well? I'm being hugged by someone who actually cares for me and makes me feel as if the world only exists between the two of us. I've won the lottery, and it's a big one. I've secretly collected my winnings. I've bought a big plot of land with lots of beautiful and unique scenery. And I'm building homes for my immediate family and best friend that somehow are technologically advanced and good for the environment, with respect for the environment around us being heavily considered. I find an financial investor I can trust to build my money, take some risks, invest in green businesses and set up trusts for my children, grandchildren and so on. I can now afford to always shop in small businesses, farmers markets, craft shows and mom and pop places. I'm able to invest wisely and dress inconspicuously, so that I do things like leave a 100 tip for a cup of coffee. They wonder who I was. Oh, and my family can finally have the dogs, cats, birds, guinea pigs, turtles, fish and rabbits that they've been asking for. I go to the pub and pick up cute boys by talking to them about Lord of the Rings. Then we end up talking about Lotta for hours and I seduce them with my nerdiness. I think about my grandma's house. She passed away 2 years ago after having a stroke that basically paralyzed her from the neck down. She had lived in that condition for 8 years before she died. I think about coming home from school and her giving me milk and cookies while I play Ocarina of Time with the fire roaring. Unlike the video game, I can't go back in time and visit her again. But it's nice to remember. Me getting railed by Michael Fassbender. Me writing everyone else's ideas down to use later. Don't laugh. I think about becoming super successful, happy, and beautiful. Then randomly encountering the boys who called me ugly and not giving them the time of day. Beach life. Palm tree with warm wines, not too hot but comfortable. What I imagine a resort in paradise with those solo huts to be like. Being a worldwide recognized music artist meeting all the celebrities I always wanted to meet. I play out conversations about the weirdest things with random people like talking about animal cruelty with the guys who wrote Phineas and Ferb. Apparently it's what PPL who have been through trauma do to process stuff, but I think my brain is just slow. So Chick-fil-A has a thing where once a year you dress up as a cow and get free food. So my scenario is that me, my best friend who I don't have yet and the rest of my grade dress up in inflatable cow suits and raid Chick-fil-A for free food during that event. There's also one where the same thing happens, except it's at Olive Garden and everyone is wearing inflatable dinosaur costumes. We seat ourselves and say please and thank you, put our napkins in our laps, push in our chairs, treat everyone with respect etc. I'm in the Star Wars universe, mostly banging Kylo Ren or the Mandalorian, but once in a while I just have cool force powers and lightsaber skills. Owning a Porsche. That my bed is floating in the middle of the ocean, but I'm safe and warm with my cat curled up at my feet. Really does the trick. That and sedatives. Stopping a school shooting was my go-to as a teen. I just wanted to imagine people respecting me for once. I just imagine someone is cuddling me. It's sad Ike, and I hope it isn't impossible, but damn Steep is looking grim. There is something that always keeps playing in my head. I'm part of the Teutonic Order fighting a glorious last stand to shift the battle at the last second in our favor. Lying in my bed in a small house in the middle of nowhere with my arms around a loving wife and the kids sound asleep as she leans in for a kiss and fall asleep under a full blanket of stars just above our heads with smiles cheek to cheek. I dream about buying a hotel in the middle of nowhere and turning it into my own personal museum with a different collection in every room. Okay, well, some of these are entirely depressing, I'm sorry all. I like to imagine stopping a robbery or just walking through houses I used to live in. Me being in a relationship with someone. I'm 20 and never been in one or even on a date. Life is lonely and I'm touch starved. I'm in a little apartment above a bakery. I have a big velvet couch where I read. It's raining and I have a bunch of houseplants. Sometimes I go down to the bakery and get some coffee and something to eat. Sometimes I think about going back to the height of the Holy Roman Empire with a few guns and a tank and establishing my own kingdom. I lead the infantry line. Lads cladded in full mail and plate against heavy horse cavalry bracing for impact. I sing sea shanties on the Red River. We dock and sell our loads of tobacco and sugar and go drinking with the lads. I develop gills and travel deep underwater, discovering leviathans and hidden giant golems ruling the realm underwater. I'm a crew member of an expedition into a deep and mysterious Aztec temple. I travel the dunes of the entire world, now covered in sand. With my trusted dromedary pebbles, we encounter raiders and water harvesters, and the saber by my side becomes handy.